Maureen is here. Ray is from New York. Alan and Edward are from New York. Daniel Sorkin is from New York. We've got a New York crowd here. Bobby Vance is from Kissimmee. Chris Diaz is in Miami. Maureen's in Miami. Rick and Judy. And good morning, good morning, good morning to you all. Some announcements before we begin. Ray is reading this morning. Judy's going to be reading an original piece that she wrote, and I think you're going to find it absolutely fascinating. It's really, really, really good. Bobby Vance is with us again reading. You'll notice this stole is new. I got one of these for Michelle, and I got an equal one for Larry Deach. So all three of us have the same one. They're the rainbow, and they are made from Grace Episcopal Church in Nampa, Idaho. It is a small, tiny Episcopal church, and to make money, the women got together and they make these stoles. Yes, in Idaho, and I got to talk to the rector, who's a riot. There's one other normal church in the entire county, ours in a Lutheran church. That's it. The rest of them, she said, are right wing, whatever. So she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm getting one for Michelle and one for," so she made them all the same. Besa is doing a Buddhist thing, so these would be inappropriate for her to wear.
What about Andrea?
Andrea, when she gets ordained, you have to be ordained to wear a stole. And that means, yes, this is a sign of ordination. Though the UU is eclectic, they use the Protestant, a lot of the Protestant orders of worship, and the same Protestant thing. You're recommended, you have to go before a committee, you have to take a series of things. They get reevaluated by the committee. And so Andrea is in that process. And when she finishes the process and gets ordained, then I'll get her one of these too. So you're going to see lots of color, which I think I would like. The other one I usually wear is lots of color. Pam Gray is with us this morning. Okay, we've not heard from Besa for a year. She's been doing a lot of stuff with Buddhism. She's been gone like for months at a time online. And she will be with us on Memorial Sunday weekend to share for the first time in a year. And so it'll be good to see her. She keeps in touch. And so you need to know she's doing a lot of social justice and social action work with committees and things like that. Pam Gray made it in this morning. Kay Schweitzer is with us. Pam is in New York. We're surrounded by New Yorkers this morning. Ray, Pat, Danny, Alan and Eddie, and Pam, all from New York. Kay Schweitzer is 10 miles west of Merritt Island. Okay, book club is going to meet next Saturday to reorganize. I've got some ideas, and we'll be talking together to see how we do that. Cindy and Larry have just made it in. I said Larry has a stole just like this, so he'll be wearing this when he's speaking. So it'll be a book club organization next Saturday at 10:30. This was the first week of semester of summer A 6-week semester, full semester in 6 weeks. And of course, the first week was all drama. All drama. Finally, everybody's sorted out. I will ultimately get to be making house calls. I still on my thing. I want you to think about maybe having a short service a couple of times this summer at Arelli's, out on the patio, just a very short kind of service to gather. Think about that if you want. This is not on the regular Sundays like the second and fourth, but maybe a third, just to kind of gather for those who want to in-class, in-face hello, maybe about a half hour to gather around and do a short summer service. Holly and Doug finished their 18-day ride. They went 900 and some miles from the Austrian Alps to the border of Denmark in Germany. It was wild. They had it on WhatsApp. They went on like several times. They were going along the route and it was stopped. And nobody had let them know. They had to go figure a whole new way to go around. It was absolutely fascinating. They put in like 10 hours a day riding, 11 hours a day, 120 miles. It was crazy, absolutely crazy, but they finished safe and well. Okay, having said all of that, let's turn to a lighting of the memorial candle. And if you have the memorial candle with you, and I knew my memorial candle is back if you have your memorial candle. And Daniel, Donald, if you would please pull up the service and let's take a look at the words for the memorial candle for this morning. For those of you if you wish to read with me, please do. We light this memorial candle for mothers and mothering, to celebrate those who have taken on the task of nurturing a young one, baby, child, or youth, into adulthood, to celebrate those who have nourished the light of truth and compassion in growing minds and hearts, to celebrate those who have committed time, money, energy to the growth of others in the world. We light this memorial candle to celebrate and hold dear this flame of love. And how can you not love the Masaka kids? Most of these are orphans in Uganda. We also see a chat from Maureen about also lighting the candle for Omar in Gaza. Please join with me in the call to worship. It is a very interesting way of doing a call to worship, if you would, Donald. And I'm going to ask you to read the green. Gloria, the tenacity of earth and its creatures. Kyrie eleison, these children who will go on to save what we cannot. Baruch Adonai Adonai, the ordinary tenacity of plants and people. Om, the center of the universe, which is everywhere, not the least place in the human heart. Alleluia, love that survives anger and winter and despair and sorrow and even death. Shalom, love that persists. Amen, and we continue to go on. Amen, blessed be. And the morning prayer for those of you who would, may the divine within us and around us move us to continually support moms and dads and families, single and many-membered, on their journey of growth and love. May we all be responsible toward each other, the environment, and all creatures, great and small. Amen. Ray Roldan this morning is going to be reading a reading by Mary J. Harrington.
Good morning, everyone. We come together today in praise and thanksgiving for the gift of life itself. Someone gave birth to us, and some of us have given birth. Today we sing the songs of so many mothers, fathers, who are single parents, foster parents, mothers, fathers, who relinquish in their young out of necessity, mothers, fathers, who found their heart in adoption, mothers, fathers, who left their children in 1,000 ways, mothers, fathers, who rejoice, and mothers, fathers, who mourn. We also sing the songs of the grandmothers, grandfather, the auntie, the uncle, the classroom teacher, the religious exploration teacher, the babysitter, even the nurturing neighbor, with endless cookies and time.
Bobby Vance is going to lead us in a responsive reading. He will read the blue and also lead us in the green.
Blessed is the person who feeds and warms, washes and comforts a child, and soothes them in illness. For they shall be called caregiver. Blessed is the person who gives shelter and food, clothing, toys, books, and tools. For they shall be called provider. Blessed is the person who opens the doors in the child's experience, who explains the puzzling and wonders at the mysterious. For they shall be called teacher. Blessed is the person who shields a child from that which will wither or warp, who protects a child from abuse and exploitation, and who guards against bullying and scorn. For they shall be called defender. Blessed is the person who takes the time to listen, who is there for a child in the darkness, who is aware of the fears, who speaks the words of encouragement in moments of despair. For they shall be called sustainer. Blessed is the person who guides a child in the search for beauty, who encourages them at what is daunting, who steadies them as they explore new experiences, and who fires their aspirations and their dreams. For they shall be called inspirer.
The next up is by Judy Homer. She wrote this as well.
Mothers. Mother Teresa, of course, legendary. Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett Till's mother. You'll remember she insisted on an open coffin. Heroic mothers who go to extraordinary lengths to protect their children. Mothers in Ukraine and Gaza. Mothers who struggle to accept their child's sexuality, but eventually come around. Love wins. Helicopter mothers, overly protective. Celebrity mothers who must fight paparazzi to protect their children. Princess Diana comes to mind. Mothers who are legal guardians of their disabled child or children. Immigrant mothers. Mothers in the animal world who are fierce in the protection of their young. Expectant mothers, grandmothers, transgender mothers, low-income mothers, and I'd like to add stepmothers at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. As I look out this morning, many of you are much, much younger than I am. It comes as a shock that I've lived more than 3/4 of a century. That's downright scary. Thank you for laughing at that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In the 50s, 1950s, not the 1850s, in the 1950s, many of you were not exposed to, and in the early 60s, the standard of family. We saw this in 3 television shows in roaring black and white: Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, and Father Knows Best. Some of you may have remembered seeing this in reruns, but this was considered the golden standard of what an American family should be. Being a kid at this time, looking at all 3 of these, it never dawned on me there were no blacks here and showing the standard of the family. There were no Hispanics. And what about those pesky people who go beyond their own ethnicity and their own religion and find somebody else in another ethnicity and another religion and they get married? Those pesky people who are go outside the box. Yes. Nowhere in any of this stuff did you see in Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best. Blacks, Hispanics, those who believed in mixing it up. No, you didn't see that at all. What you saw was white, upper middle class. Did you look at the houses these people lived in? Oh, my soul, did you see that? Oh, My 3 Sons. Okay, I forgot My 3 Sons. And you didn't, you didn't see, you saw upper middle class housing, and you saw June Cleaver in a dress in the house. Who wears dresses in the house during the day and wearing pearls sometimes with an apron as she's going about the business of the house? But we were told this was the standard. And I remember I would give my mother the dachshund side eye, wondering why isn't she wearing a dress in the house? Only at parties, it seemed, but never during like she's supposed to. Pete Seeger, who some of you may remember, wrote a book about these houses. Some of you will giggle, I think, when you remember little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky. Does any of you remember this? Little boxes, all the same. And there's a green one and a pink one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. Yes. So if you couldn't be living in an upper middle class house, at least you owned a house, and it was made of ticky-tacky, and it looked green, yellow, and suburbia. Those in New York, remember Levittown. Yes, 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 yes. And while all this was happening to be the standard, we find that women found themselves now in house arrest. And by that, I mean, imagine you lived in Levittown or other communities like this. All the houses were pretty much the same. There was only one car, and who had the car? The husband. Yes, you had to have a husband, you know. And you had to have kids, 2.3 or 4.1. You had to have kids. That means you as a woman were left stuck at home on this square box doing the same schedule day in and day out with screaming little kids. That's what little kids do. Yes, 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 yes. And I'm thinking, you know, and then it turns out in the 50s, women began to rebel against all of this stuff, the gold standard of perfection. And so they went and complained to the first time to therapists who, in the mid-1950s, are you ready for this? Were sick and tired of whining women who were not appreciating having their own ticky-tacky house with their own dress and having certain ways to be. They did not, and men got infuriated at the lack of gratitude of these women. So they invented a pill. Yes, the pill. No, not that pill, another pill. The first pill, and it was called, are you ready for this? Drum roll, wait for it, Valium. Yes, to keep these ungrateful women in their place. Now, in the 1950s, women began to drink socially for the first time and was respected. You know, I feel sorry for them in the 50s. In the 1940s, before World War I, women were considered the weaker sex. Then, when the factories were empty, suddenly these weak, lesser animals of the species were now in the factory, man doing man's work and doing it really well, and showed how strong they really were. Come the end of the war, they're now relegated to back being weak again and being stuck in these houses. Can you blame them? Then, of course, they started to drink socially in the 1950s. And did anybody stop to ask, what happens if you combine a Valium with alcohol? Nobody seemed to combine this. And you wonder why the 60s took place? Hello? Vietnam, Valium being stuck in ticky-tacky, and you're supposed to be wearing a dress during the day with pearls and an apron. Yes. The ideal family. I'm going to share with you some real stories of the late 50s and 60s from people I know who wrote about this and shared it with me. The 60s. My mother was a single parent of 3. My brother was only 10. My sister was 6, and I was 17 when I graduated out of high school. She soldiered on, 17, 10, and 6, without any real education or training, and managed to support us with absolutely no help from my father. She did this without demanding that I give up my pursuit of a college degree, for I would be the first one in the family to get a college degree. I helped out, but it certainly did not take us bread by any stretch of the imagination. My mother, then when my sister was finally able to give birth, my mother, however, raised my sister's firstborn. He had special issues and special needs. In the 60s and 70s, I don't know if any of you remember this, there was an outbreak of grandparents having to raise their children's children. Do any of you remember that? In the 70s, it was pointed out how many grandparents, because the kids got caught in drugs, they died in Vietnam. It was just a terrible time in the 60s. People, I go to people I know who said, Kenneth, weren't the glorious 60s glorious? I'm saying, what 60s were you living in? They certainly were here. And so people in another, we got here, another one talks about what it's like to be in a real world. Yeah, my best friend in the 1970s raised by our grandparents. Can you imagine being in your 70s and having to raise somebody in middle school? Have you ever taken a look at, do you even remember middle school? Middle school, I never understood. I meet people who love teaching middle school. I always thought people in middle school should be cryonically frozen for 10 years until they got over that period. Imagine you are 74 and you've got a 13-year-old who is full of raging hormones, and the answer, no, just like when they were 2. Imagine you've got somebody 15 and 16 going through what is normal at that time, total rebellion. You don't know me. You don't know what I feel. You're old. You don't care what I'm really going through. Can you imagine that? Yes. And this is what those grandparents are going through. Yes, the ideal family of Leave It to Beaver and Fathers Know Best and My 3 Sons, these were ideal, but they were not real. But somehow it got imprinted on us in the United States. This is the way it should be. And all along, all over the place, most families, or at least a lot of families, were finding that was not the way it was for them. To show you how this hasn't really changed in one sense, the following, I hope, will make you cry in a way. My granddaughter is 16 years old and became anorexic in January and was in an outpatient facility for over 2 months. She and another patient were molested by a third patient. Her things were stolen. She became institutionalized. Major depression and anorexia, but according to them, could not be treated concurrently. They deemed her ready to be released for outpatient care the beginning of last week. This was written just to me just a few days ago. The second day after seeing her weight, she walked out of the outpatient and took off. They needed police drones, dogs, and everything. They finally found her in Waltham, Massachusetts. She ended up at Boston Children's Hospital, where her mother, my daughter, slept on a stretcher for 3 days in ER because there were no beds available in the psych ward. My lovely, talented, smart granddaughter who wanted to be a doctor is in crisis. I cannot go there. I live in Florida. My back is shot and my body is old. My daughter is divorced. She has no family there for support. Her emotionally distant father prefers she not talk to him. For me, part of being a single mom is feeling that you can never be enough. I don't think we ever really appreciate, but maybe we do. I hope we do. The incredible diversity. I'm sorry, Governor, we're allowed to use the word diversity in the church. You can't stop us from that. We are allowed to say that families are diverse and have always been diverse. Take a look at the people you know growing up. Take a look at the people you knew in school. Look at the number of parents. Even I, growing up on a rural island, was aware of the different backgrounds of people, different things they brought to the table. Some things we need to know about American families. American families right now have, in fact, become what they were becoming in the 50s and 60s, but nobody wanted to admit. 3 things are changing the American family today, and I don't think this comes as any surprise. High divorce rates, postponing marriage, and more women in the workplace. I looked at Axios this morning, which I never did. It said 71% of American women that can work are in the workplace. 71%, an all-time high. High divorce rate, postponing marriage. If you look at the times in which people used to get married, it's been postponed. I think of going to school and graduating from college, yes, in the dark ages. And I remember in May, my college class graduated. And in June, at the age of 21, 70% got married. Yes, in May, they graduated. In June, at the age of 21, they got married. 10 years later, they were all divorced. And so today, you're going to find people are postponing marriages. They've seen what happened to their parents and their grandparents, and there are no quick rush to get married. No quick rush at ever. I'm still, much to my surprise, officiating at weddings. The average age of the person I officiate at for their first wedding is 32. That would have put you as an old person when I was growing up. The American family. 54% in the United States today are living with a single parent. 54% of children today are living with a single parent. Just 38% of children today in the United States are living with both parents. And only 22% are living with two parents who are both in their first marriage. That's right. The Leave It to Beaver, father knows best, etc., the gold standard accounts for 22% of the families in the United States today, but people are still harangued about, you must be blah, 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 harking back to a standard from the 1950s. The reality is times change. Times change. Some more things about family. What is satisfaction? It used to be being satisfied was having a spouse, children, having your own home, and some land. Those days are long gone. The Pew Research Center found that in 1923, that adults of all tend to say that the number 3 things for life that gives you pleasure are job satisfactions, having close friends are the 2 most important things. Job satisfaction and having close friends are the ways to have a fulfilling life. Notice, marriage and children are not mentioned at all. They are much less to say the same thing about being married. Among all adults ages 18 to 34 in the United States, only 20% say being married is extremely important. That's it. So, times have changed. What are we doing about this? What are the great challenges? You never saw this, by the way, in Leave It to Beaver. You never saw this in Ozzie and Harriet. You never saw this in Father Knows Best or My 3 Sons. What are the 3 things that challenge all families? And it is very clear they challenge them today: mental health, regular health issues, violence, poverty and economic distress, racial and ethnic differences, lack of tolerance of diversity, oh, thank you, Florida, and the impact of technology and social media on communication and relationships. How is it about mental health? Where in Florida, I don't know if you've read this, Florida has turned down regularly government help, free for mental health, has turned down free help for those in distress. Violence. By the way, did any of you realize that women can be violent against their husbands? Did you know one of the great stories that never gets told is the percentage of women who beat their husbands? You've all heard about husbands abusing wives. Did you know the percentage of wives that actually beat their husbands is as high as 30%? Nobody likes to talk about, if you're a man, that your wife beat the crap out of you. Nobody likes to admit it. But women, when they lose their temper, 30% can be just as violent. And you joke about a frying pan, or you joke about a vacuum cleaner, or you joke about a kitchen utensil, or any other number of things in the house, and getting struck when somebody's in violent anger can be extraordinarily life-threatening. We don't like to talk about that one either, do we? Mental health, health issues. Ronnie Ziffel, growing up on Brigantine Island, kid with wild hair, got left back in the 3rd grade. Nobody understood. Ronnie cried. He didn't understand. So 20 years after I grow up, if I ever grew up, I go back to Brigantine Island. And who do I meet? Ronnie Ziffel, who's now the #1 home builder, a huge business on the island. You know why he got left back? And nobody understood this, and neither he had dyslexia. Dyslexia. They were not back then diagnosing that in children. And by the way, when you get older, when you start typing on the computer, you're going to find the number of times you reinvert things. Dyslexia is when you see things and you see them not quite right, not quite the same. I remember a child saying, you know, I just can't see things right. And I see things backward. And it takes me a while to adjust and I don't see things right. Back in the 50s, you got left back and were made fun of. Mental health issues count for little children as well. But that's not all. We have ADHD. We have all kinds of issues today. And thank heavens we are acknowledging people on the spectrum and showing how wide and diverse the spectrum is. Roy Martin talks about his oldest son being on the spectrum, dropped out of high school. And guess what? He's making a mint because he sees code. He can write and see code that the rest of us have no clue what it is. He gets up there and puts this stuff together and does it and sees it. The number of people, my grandson has married his girlfriend of 8 years. Both of them are on the spectrum and both of them do code. He just got hired by the same company that his wife works for. They see stuff and people say to me, how do you talk to them? Nobody else, I don't know what I see, but they see things that I can't see. We are beginning to celebrate finally differences that can be cool and good. Not everybody wants to live in a ticky-tacky yellow, green, blue box. Thank you very much. Poverty. Have you looked at the poverty rate of Miami-Dade County? Just taking it for those of you who live outside Miami-Dade County, we see Brickell, we see Coral Gables by the sea, Brickell Avenue, we see places, some places, a few on Miami Beach, not as many as you would think. And we don't realize the extreme poverty level in Miami-Dade County. Do you know what the average paycheck goes for in Miami-Dade County? 40% of the paycheck in Miami-Dade County goes for rent or a mortgage. That is unsustainable. Absolutely unsustainable. And so we talk about how do you raise kids? How do you raise kids? When we were on COVID and all the schools closed up, Comcast gave free internet to all the school kids. But what happens when you can't afford a Chromebook? Not everybody's school was able to give Chromebooks. And then what happens when everybody goes back to school and the free internet is taken away? Those of you who look at the internet, do you realize how much you pay a month for internet and add that up, how much that is a year? We have 20% of Miami-Dade County is impoverished. This counts in raising a family. The American Family Psychological Association says that 40 to 50% of first marriages will end in divorce. 60 to 70 will end, and second marriages will end in divorce. The average age of a couple entering their first divorce is 30. 60% of all divorces are between 25 and 39. And here's one for you. To upset the American family, here's a phrase. Do any of you know this phrase, gray divorce? Do any of you know the phrase, gray divorce? This occurs when people decide to divorce after 50. Yeah, sometimes men, when they hit 55, realize they are 55 and get scared and decide to act like they're 20. That usually and always ends in disaster, not usually ends in disaster, but what happens to the wife at 50? And so gray divorce has now become a major, major issue as we look at what do you do with an aging population. So what do we do then, folks? The family structure has changed. The values and beliefs in Americans have changed. I shared the religious statistics of Miami-Dade County for 2024 with my world religion class. They were shocked, absolutely shocked at how much Miami-Dade County has changed. 30% of Miami-Dade County is not interested in affiliating with any religion at all. Add atheists and agnostics on top of that, a third of the county is fed up with any kind of organized religion. That came as a shock. Evangelicals who thought they were running the county found that they were reduced to 20% of the county. And Roman Catholics found they have dropped from 888,000 to 450,000 in the last 20 years. So I'm saying things have changed all over. Now, what do you and I do about this? What do you and I do about this? I think Judy got it absolutely correct when she talked about the real world and mothers. And we talked about the families. Remember Emmett Till's mother. Remember those who protect their children. Remember Ukraine and Gaza and the Western Bank and the West Bank. Remember those whose children are going to be gay or bi or trans. Did you know that when I was in FIU one spring semester in Miami-Dade College, I had 3 gay students and they were all thrown out of their houses by their families, all 3. And all 3 came and said to me, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no place to go. I don't know if I can come back to school. I said, we'll go to counseling. We'll see if we can find something. Guess who saved the day for all 3 kids? Their grandparents. The kids were back in school, as it turns out, too, at FIU and one Miami-Dade in a week. And they said, our grandparents all said the same thing. I don't understand this, but you're my grandchild and I love you dearly and you'll stay here. You'll stay here. There's a group that works with gay kids in Miami-Dade County. The estimate is between 125 and 150 kids are on the street at night because they've been thrown out of their families because of their sexuality. What are we going to do about that? What about celebrity moms? What about paparazzi? What about moms who are legal guardians? Legal guardians because they're disabled children. What about expectant mothers, grandmothers, trans mothers, low income, and stepmoms? It is up to you and I to do a couple of things. Number one, the 50s were bunk. There never was the family that was the correct family to have, even back in the 50s. Racism was alive. Well, did you notice again? None of those families were black. None of those families were Hispanic. None of those families were mixed. Do you think the overwhelming majority of families in the 1950s were upper middle class economically or lower upper class? Really? What country were you living in? It certainly wasn't the country I grew up in. It is up to you and I as caring, loving people to accept the reality of the diversity and eclecticness of the family today. Not to jump back to a standard that was faulted to begin with. Not to accept that, but to realize that what you are is what you are, and it's up to you and to me and as a congregation to affirm. I was not aware, I keep mentioning this, how ignorant I am. I thought when people said you're welcome into a congregation, no, welcoming is not enough. If you're welcome, that means you're welcome until people find out exactly more about you, then they try to change you. When you see a congregation that says welcoming and affirming, that means not only you're welcome, but you are affirmed for who you are, what you are, where you are, and how you are. And that's simply not enough done today. So on Mother's Day and Family Day, I want us to recommit again and again and again. We welcome and we affirm who you are, how you are, what you are, whatever kind of family it is that works, what grounds you and keeps you whole. Let us walk with you on your journey and you walk with us on our journey, and we make a big family, how wild and weird and outside the box it is, but that's the way it is, and we do it together in love and affection and commitment. That's what I ask for all of us this day and every day. May it be so, may it be so. Amen. Jesus of Nazareth annoyed a lot of people. He went and touched and worked with lepers. He met with outcasts. He insisted on having lunch with the chief tax collector of Jericho. And he wanted to know people and affirm them for who they are. It is in that spirit of love and affection and affirmation we always take time to symbolically offer bread and cup. The very, very simple things of bread and cup to welcome, to affirm, to love, to hold close. On this day and every day, families, however we define them, however they keep us together and grounded. And then we turn, speaking of families and all that that entails, to little children who read this incredible story by Winnie the Pooh and Piglet. Isn't it strange that in a worship service, we turn to Winnie the Pooh and Piglet for some serious advice? Please read after me, if you would. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And for those of you who wish, if you read the following prayer with me as we leave, in the beauty and the stillness of this day, which we all keep in our own way, may peace be in your heart, joy in your movements, faith in your breathing, and hope in your presence. Let us all be a wordless prayer of joyful dance and song, hailing the future, hailing creation, Selah. And now may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. May we go in peace. Amen. Well, thank you, Ray and Robert and Judy, for reading today. And thank you, Judy, for writing that magnificent piece for us this morning. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Rick and Judy, Maureen and Chris Diaz from North Miami, and Maureen and Danny and Pam and Kay Schweitzer and Cindy and Larry and Alan and Edward and Cecilia and the mob from Kissimmee and New York all over the place. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a golden day, and thank you for your commitment for diversity and equality all the time. I cannot thank you for that enough. We do it. Amen. Amen. Bless you all. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. New York in the house.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, and
Have
happy
a good
Mother's
one.
Day.
Bye-bye.
Happy Mother's Day
Happy
to
Mother's
all the
Day.
mothers.
Happy
So
Mother's
Pat
Day.
and Maureen, clearly most day.
Tak for det.
Yeah, tak for det.
That means, Dr. Reverend, that means thank you in Danish.
How do you know? I don't know how you pronounce this stuff.
I don't know either.
Chris, I give you a big hug from a distance. A hug from a
Good
distance. I love
answer.
it.
Good answer.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Bye.
it. That is the answer. That is the answer, folks. That is the answer.
That's-
Thank you all. Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye,
Have a good day,
everyone.
everybody.